across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 1. Afternoon, I'm Mark Dolan, in for the brilliant Ian Collins. A packed 3 hours for you this afternoon. Breaking this afternoon, Rachel Reeves is the real petrol profiteer, according to some of Britain's top business chiefs, as they attack the Chancellor for raking in millions from higher prices at the pumps. And as the Chancellor points to events in the Middle East, can she really blame the war in Iran for Britain's crumbling economy? Do you buy that excuse? Meanwhile, as their momentum in the polls drops, have Nigel Farage's Reform UK peaked? Or is their support the tip of the iceberg? I'll be asking a Reform UK insider. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer makes London Mayor Sadiq Khan a lord, presumably a reward for spiralling knife crime in the capital. And tech giants are sued for kids spending too long online. But isn't it the parents' job to raise their children properly and make sure that they're not on a screen? Isn't that the job of mum and dad? Have we lost the art of good old-fashioned parenting? Also very excited about this. Old Starmer, has he destroyed the special relationship? We will head live to Washington, D.C. and Margaret Thatcher's former chief advisor. So a packed show. My priority for 3 hours is to get your opinions on the radio and on the TV. So give us a call. My number is 0344 499 1000. The formidable Faith is taking your calls. Have we lost the art of good parenting? And are you buying Rachel from Account's excuse that it's the Iran war which has destroyed the British economy? Also, another illegal jailed for the rape of a 12-year-old girl. When are the establishment going to wake up and protect the people of this country? I want your reaction to that truly horrific story. If illegal immigration isn't an emergency, I don't know what is. Now, you can text the word TALK in your message to 87222, and we know you're busy on a Friday, so why not leave us a voice note? We'll get it on the radio, we'll get it on the telly. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online, or you can watch the show. Luke is directing our TV output today, so head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. Finley's in charge, he's the boss, and I'm reunited with a very, very old friend of mine who is our lead engineer today. So excited to have Amy back pressing the buttons, and I'm going to press your buttons for 3 hours. Let's go. And in that spirit, let's kick off, Finley, with a very special Friday Dolan's Dispatch. Why is society crumbling? Mass uncontrolled immigration, for sure. The cult of welfarism, in which it pays to stay at home rather than get up early in the morning and go to work. Absent fathers are a factor in our crumbling society. Drugs, obviously, alcohol, cigarettes. Materialism, a lack of spirituality. Promiscuity could be a factor. The decline of marriage, the erosion of the family unit, and perhaps most importantly, the reason why our society could be crumbling is because of a crisis of parenting. We just don't know how to raise our children anymore. We've stopped doing it. They raise themselves. The statistics are eye-watering around how many children are going to primary school, not able to use a toilet properly. You've got children going to primary school in modern Britain that are in nappies, don't know how to use a lavatory. The statistics are eye-watering about how many children that go to school have had insufficient sleep, arrive wearing the wrong uniform or no uniform at all, and that are going to school without a proper meal in their stomach. Now, this is not complicated stuff. We have an extraordinarily large and generous welfare state, the cost of which is now bigger than the entire tax take of the country. And yet, people apparently don't have the money to give their kids a boiled egg, a couple of soldiers and a bowl of Weetabix before they get to school. Well, 50 years ago, when families and the country were proportionally poorer, the vast majority of kids did go to school correctly dressed, did go to school knowing how to use a toilet, did go to school having done their homework, did go to school having respect for their teachers and classmates, did go to school with brushed hair, clean teeth, polished shoes, the right uniform, the right attitude, and they went to school with a meal in their stomach. Because then, 50 years ago, it wasn't about money. It was about values, it was about standards, it was about respect, it was about discipline. Which is why, for the life of me, I cannot understand why, as we've reported on the show in the last 24 hours, technology companies like Meta, who own Instagram and Facebook or YouTube, are apparently to blame for children spending too long on a screen. It's their fault for creating an attractive product. But the bottom line is that these children don't live with the tech giants. They live with a mother and a father, two adults. That's what your parents are. So it's mum's job and it's dad's job to say you're having the iPad or the iPhone or the computer for half an hour once you've done your homework. And it's mum and dad's job to say, I'm careful about what you're watching. It's got to be Tom and Jerry or Bugs Bunny, not inappropriate content on TikTok. This is the job of mum and dad. It's not Elon Musk's job. It's not Mark Zuckerberg's job. It's the job of mum and dad. But we've given up parenting our kids. Now, let me be super honest with you. I feel sorry, for example, for police officers who now have to deal with so many of society's problems. They've got to take out the trash, in metaphorical terms, in relation to mental health, drug abuse and social deprivation, when really they should be focused on tackling crime and going after criminals. I've got sympathy for doctors and nurses who on a daily basis, rather than dealing with broken legs and broken limbs, are dealing with a broken society, with A&E departments full of drunk dropouts and drug addicts. It's not their job to sort that out. And I've got sympathy for teachers whose job is now, it seems, to raise our kids rather than us doing it. And it's their job, apparently, to undo the mistakes of the parents, to fix their failures and their neglect. They've got to do all of that in the classroom. Well, I'm so sorry, that is asking too much. Because the job of a teacher is to teach mathematics and reading and geography. Their job is not to cure little Johnny's depression or his erratic behaviour or his ADHD because the only food he eats is pizza and the only thing he looks at is a screen. It's mum and dad's job to make sure that children know right from wrong. It's their job to give their child 3 square meals a day, and welfare payments make that abundantly possible. War-ravaged Brits managed to do it in the 1950s when post-war rationing was still in place. So in this time of plenty, the same, if not more, can be expected of today's parents. It's a parent's job to read with their children, to dress them properly, to brush their hair and teeth. I've heard horror stories of what dentists are now dealing with. Young children, healthy teeth extracted because of sweets, sugary drinks and junk food. It's not good enough. You are a parent. Do your job. There are some kids in this country that don't even know what a toothbrush looks like. So stop blaming the teachers. Stop blaming the tech giants. Blame the parents. It's their job to raise their kids and no one else's. And if they want to do it, if they want to be a parent, then have the kids. If you don't want to do the work, then don't have kids in the first place. I'm sorry, folks, but Britain needs a bit of tough love. And for those who don't like it, tough luck. 12 minutes past 1. Live down the line is comedian, broadcaster and excellent parent, Steve N. Allen. Hello, Steve.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm very well. At some point, I'm going to have to get off that fence, aren't I?
You might as well. You're getting splinters where you shouldn't get splinters. Yeah.
Listen, it's important, isn't it, that if you're going to bring kids into the world, you parent them yourself.
Yeah, do you know what? I think part of the problem is we have a culture, maybe also a social media, that just sells the message that being a parent is, oh, it's so tough, it's the hardest thing in the world. So you're the victim for being a parent, and oh, isn't it so tough? Therefore, you have an excuse for doing the cheapest version, the quickest, easiest version. Oh, just throw a phone in front of the kids. It keeps them busy because I'm so stressed. Everyone wants to go through life pretending they are the most stressed person they've ever met because that victim position is the most powerful one. It's the get out of jail card. No, having kids is a privilege. And look, I know we're sarcastic Brits, so I don't want to get too pious on this, but actually it's a privilege to get to raise a human. Do you know what I mean? You're in control of what this person's going to grow into. Yeah, sure, it takes a little bit of effort. At the moment, so I've got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, and our 2-year-old daughter, bless her, love her, but she's really learning how she can just cry like some sort of Charlie Brown thing when she doesn't get what she wants. So she'll want something, and we'll say no. And you just sit it out. Like, logically, we all know it. That if you just let them cry because you've said no, they'll learn that saying no isn't the worst thing in the world. The same thing is true about the phones. If they want the phones and they're crying for it, try saying no. It might not be pretty, but you can get through it that way. Do you know what I mean? It's within your control as a parent. You just maybe have to suffer for a little while.
Most definitely. And we need to do this across society. I wonder whether we need to teach parenting skills at school. But I do think we've lost the art of it, because when I grew up, the most familiar word in the household, Steve, was no. These days, it seems to be yes.
It should be for you as well. You probably should have heard it a few more times.
Well, I get no from Mrs. Dolan now, and that's another story. Family show, behave yourself, Steve. Come on.
She's right on that as well.
We've all had a drink.
Yeah, but you know, you're right. You're thoroughly right, because without no, if your kids don't learn to hear no, what kind of a hideous adult are you going to produce? This is the thing I think about all the time. There are certain traits where you think, look, it's not great, but even with the daughter crying all the time, if she learns that crying will get her what she wants, what kind of social media influencer am I going to raise? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this
you
is
want
the big
least
thing.
toxic traits. You don't. I don't even let her have a T-shirt that says princess on it, because you don't want to grow the kind of person who has powered by fairy dust written on the back of their Volkswagen. You want to have a good person, and you're in charge of growing a good person, and it should be seen as a privilege, an opportunity, rather than, oh, it's the hardest job in the world, I'm just going to moan about it and then talk about wine o'clock.
And, Steve, I am no reactionary blowhard. I understand that people are struggling, and I understand, you know, inflation, the cost of stuff at the supermarket. You've got people holding down 1, 2, 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads and to keep the kids fed. But we do have a pretty comprehensive system of welfare, and it's provably true that families were relatively poorer in the 1950s after the Second World War, but they did send their kids to school with a square meal in their stomach. And there was that discipline, there was that expectation that a parent had certain duties that had to be fulfilled. And I'm not sure that poverty, notwithstanding that it exists, is an excuse on this one.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to disprove poverty to say that some of these things are still achievable. Discipline doesn't cost you anything. You can certainly give your kids discipline. Teaching them to clean their teeth, it's not an expensive pursuit. I don't know how much you're paying for your toothpaste these days, but shops do some very cheap versions of it. Calcium's not the trickiest thing to mine out of the ground. You could definitely teach that. School uniforms, they've changed it, so actually it's cheaper to manage to buy them. So look, you can still be struggling with money, but still make sure that your priorities are up top. You can say no to your kids. It doesn't cost you anything to say no to your kids when it comes to issues about phone usage and other things where discipline would be important. So all of that is achievable. So I don't think we need to pretend that somehow poverty is not a thing. But if you think your job, and if you think there will be shame if you have failed, and you send your child to school unable to wash themselves, clean themselves, use the toilet, because that's what it was in the old days, a bit of shame. I kind of understand where this has come from. There's been this change where you don't want to say anything mean to parents because everything's been rewritten that they're, you know, mothers have the hardest job in the world, therefore you can't say, oh, you should do better, therefore look what's happened. Whereas in the old days, there would have been a sense of shame. If you sent your kid to school unable to clean their own teeth, that was on you as a parent.
Most definitely. Steve, no two people think alike. Where have I gone wrong with Dolan's dispatch? Were there elements you disagreed with? Am I being too harsh on parents?
I don't think it's that you're being too harsh. The only thing I totally disagree with you on is it came across like you were saying it was all the parents' job and the tech companies can't be blamed for making a good product. You can't be blamed, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't bring in regulations. Tobacco companies, I'm sure, would sell cigarettes to kids, but we bring in regulations to not do because you keep addictive things away from kids. Alcohol, I'm sure there'd be some nefarious big corp out there that would love to make alco pops for 4-year-olds, but we don't let them because as a society we can also do it. It's not either or. Parents are in charge of it, and we can say, well, we'll put a restriction in on that. So you don't let kids drive, drink or smoke. You could say, of course, a company will make an app addictive, and then because we know it's so successful, we keep it away from kids.
But is it not the parent's job to decide what a child looks at and how long they've got access to a screen? Why is that Mark Zuckerberg's job? He lives in America.
But then the same point would be, surely it's parents' jobs to keep Jack Daniels away from their 4-year-olds. Surely it's not Jack's responsibility to stop a nice, tasty beverage at the end of the week being the way they wind down after school. We have restrictions when we know something might be a bit too much for kids. Yeah. So I can understand.
Well, I've got to say, well, my youngest was 4. His tipple was JD and Coke, but each to their own.
Yeah, Coke. Kids these days. Have it with ice.
I'll tell you. Listen, a very interesting conversation. Well, we're going to continue this. But, folks, I want your calls. Tell me, have you already raised your kids? Did you struggle? Is poverty an excuse for the fact that kids go to school without a square meal? Is poverty an excuse for the fact that kids are spending 3 or 4 hours a day on a screen? Who's to blame? Have we lost the art of traditional parenting? Tell me what you think. Please put the world to rights on this one. 0344 499 1000. Give Alice... here we go again. Give Faith... I have been calling Faith Alice for 2 years now. I don't know what's wrong with my brain. Folks, so much to get through. Next up, has Rachel Reeves crashed the economy? Don't go anywhere.
Breaking news on Talk Breakfast. 2 men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Have we lost the art of traditional parenting? This from Michael, who says, hello, Mark. I was born in 1942. I remember my mum sitting me on her lap in front of a clock to teach me the time. I made many mistakes, but over time I learned to tell the truth. Dad loved his gardening and raising children for eggs. Collecting them was exciting. That is what childhood looks like. Dave says, I write to my MP a lot. I wrote about this on the 19th of March. My wife and I do not agree with lifting the two-child benefit cap. We were fortunate enough to be able to have 2 children because we could afford to. Married, or in some cases unmarried, if you can't afford to have children, do not have them and don't expect the taxpayer to pay for them. Jill says, hello, Mark. Parents today are only part-time parents because some children are left in nurseries, good or bad, from 6 months, some all day, some not. A lot of parents expect nurseries to toilet train their children. This is why some children start school still in nappies or not ready, because parents can't parent anymore and you've got badly run nurseries. This from Adil. Mark, you're spot on. British society is crumbling. Too many modern parents are but a shadow of their ancestors. Dave, excellent dispatch, Mark. The wife and I totally relate to this, agree fully with you in everything you've said. Well done. Well, Dave, thank you for that. Let me know if you disagree, folks, because it's all about opinions. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is blaming what's happening in the Middle East for the British economy crumbling. Is that a worthy excuse? Let's get the views of Steve N. Allen, broadcaster and comedian. Steve, has she got a point? Inflation is certainly not being helped by the war in Iran.
It's true that these are having an impact. The way in which they're trying to spin this to make it look like it's the entire cause of all of the problems is hilarious. So we're a couple of weeks since the Chancellor had the meeting with the boss of all the bosses of all the big petrol companies to make sure they were not doing anything that harms this economy. And could you imagine how hard it must be to sit on the opposite side of the table to Rachel Reeves and she asks you about you harming the economy? You'd be holding up your notes so you could laugh behind it like she doesn't know. She thinks we're the one doing it. And the big story at the moment is about how much they're making sure the petrol companies aren't price gouging. Meanwhile, the amount of VAT and duty, because it's a percentage, so as the price of the petrol goes up, the government rakes in more money from this. She's absolutely pocketing a ton of wedge here, whilst at the same time saying it's their fault that this is happening. What they could do is reduce the duty and reduce the VAT. So the amount of tax take that they're getting, the government is getting, is what they predicted. They've budgeted this. They roughly thought they knew how much money they'd be getting from fuel duty. So just take that, reduce it for the rest of us. You'd then get to stand on the steps and do your little lectern speech saying, we are helping Britain. I would willingly let them be smug if I could pay less at the pump for a while.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm glad you mentioned the pump, because you live in the real world like my viewers and listeners, Steve, which is why we love having you on. And we've got this headline. Rachel Reeves, last night accused of profiteering from rising fuel prices. The claim came amid a furious row with petrol bosses. Kemi Badenoch was joined by some of Britain's top business chiefs in attacking the Chancellor, who's raking in soaring tax receipts from higher prices at the pumps. The boss of Next, Lord Wolfson, said the government must not end up profiteering from the crisis in the Middle East. He's right, isn't he?
Yeah, and I'm a bald middle-aged man in a check shirt. Of course I'm going on about petrol prices. However, ignore me and just take the general point. Everything is based on petrol prices, isn't it? Because everything you buy gets driven around this nation on the back of a lorry, which is fueled by, there you go, some fuel. So the cost of fuel impacts the cost of everything. If you want to bring down inflation, what you could do, literally, Rachel Reeves, if you're listening, and I'm sure you're a big fan of the show, if you reduce the duty and the VAT, so you'd still get the same money you wanted, it would bring down petrol prices, which would then ease slightly all prices of any goods you're about to buy from any shop, which therefore means inflation would come down. And again, you could stand out front of number 10 with a lectern giving it the old, look how I brought inflation down. It's within their control. I don't know why they don't want to do it.
You have to wonder, don't you? Do you see the government changing course? Because we had 0% growth in January. It's particularly painful for a Labour government not to grow the economy because they exist to spend money on public services. But at the moment, things are going in the opposite direction.
I think at some point there'll have to be a bit of a pivot, because if it were to be the case that this is another U-turn, I think we could all promise to not go on about how many U-turns. You know what I mean? If this 16th or 17th U-turn is the one that really helps the economy, I promise to not mock you for the fact that, you know, Keir Starmer spins so much he looks like he's doing dancing on ice. I wouldn't do that. I would let them do it, because if it helps the economy, we shouldn't judge this. And they could also do a U-turn on getting a little bit of gas out of the North Sea. Do you know what I mean? That is also a way that we could still have the goal. We could still have net zero, but if you do it in an achievable way, rather than one that makes energy so expensive, you could help this nation. We've got our energy prices the most expensive in Europe, and petrol is way too expensive. Both of them can come down, and it would fix the core problems with our economy.
You are no frothing right-winger yourself, Steve, but what's your appraisal of this administration so far?
My general take on it is, even if they identify a true problem, the way in which they go about executing their version of the solution is the worst case scenario. So you could make the argument to me that millionaire pensioners don't need winter fuel allowance. That sentence seems perfectly valid. But their solution was to do it in a way that absolutely slaps all pensioners unless they are earning or taking home less than 12 grand a year. What? Absolute poverty line numbers, and everyone else gets a slapping for it. No, that doesn't make any sense. You could say to me, there's a problem with the way that loopholes were being used for people to get around inheritance tax using farms. Then close the loophole. Don't bring in a tax that makes all farmers, you know, the people who make the food that I clearly love eating so much, don't make them suffer. Absolutely everything was done in the wrong way. The problems may well be correctly identified, but somehow, magically, they find the worst way around it.
Steve, do you agree with Nigel Farage that there may be an economic event in the next 12 months which could provoke an early general election?
I don't know, because things seem to be moving really slowly on this. And the fact that as time moves on, there should be less financial problems caused by the Iranian war, because it looks like they're not as quick as Donald Trump said they were, but things may be slowly coming to an end. You'll get the pressure easing off that as we continue to have problems to do with the borrowing cost. That's the big worry, isn't it? When the markets suddenly go, we don't think you deserve a good rating anymore. That's normally when a nation worries. That's when we had to exit the ERM back in the days. Like every single time there's a big economic problem, it's to do with a lack of, a lack of belief in a nation's ability to pay its debts. So if we head a bit near there, then maybe, but I imagine as those problems go up, we should see inflation come around, especially when Rachel Reeves listens to my theory on energy and fuel and brings down inflation that way. I'm sure that will happen.
Well, of course. I mean, she listens to you avidly, and so she should. Steve, I've got lots of viewers and listeners that really worry about the future of this government. They say that we don't actually have 3 years to carry on like this, that the country will be gone by then. What say you?
That, I think, is too pessimistic, because this nation is fairly good at surviving things. You know, we did get through a couple of wars, so let's not catastrophize ourselves, because sometimes with catastrophizing, you can actually end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Things economically are going to be a bit tough. For the last couple of years, I've been saying this out loud, and I don't like saying it. We have pretended for decades we are a richer nation than we actually are, by continuing to borrow, by having cheaper labour than we should have had, by having cheaper products than we should have had, by outsourcing some of the things to China just because it makes us look like we're richer than we are for a while. We've got addicted to that drug, and at some point we're going to have to wean ourselves off. That's not going to be fun, and my theory is we should only do that in about 50 years' time, when I'm definitely dead.
Well, listen, long may you reign supreme, Steve, because we don't want to celebrate your departure anytime soon. Thank you so much for joining us. I understand at the last minute as well. Brilliant to have you on the show. Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster. Check out his brilliant YouTube show. Well worth a watch. Such an important and busy conversation we're having today. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Have we lost the art of traditional parenting? Here's a voice note from Hev.
Hi, Mark. Hev from Kent. I totally and utterly agree with you in your dispatch. Parents are not parents anymore. Their standards are disgustingly low. So many of them are victims. You know, this day and age, it's victimisation or victims. Everybody's a victim. So the parents are doing, oh, my poor little Johnny, I haven't got this and I haven't got. So then those kids are all also growing up to be victims and expecting everybody to do everything for them, and it disgusts me. I brought up my 4 children. I had no parent, no other parent with me. I had no other boyfriend with me. I did it on my own. I didn't have time for myself. And my kids went to school with brushed hair, clean teeth, decent school uniform, polished shoes, decent food in their stomach, decent packed lunch or whatever. People just don't parent anymore.
A powerful voice note. Keep them coming. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? This from Simon. Hi, Mark. Walk into any Wetherspoons boozer and you'll see families with the kids on phones and tablets glued to the screens whilst the parents sup Stella Artois. Yes, it's the parents' responsibility to limit screen time, but you try instilling any sense of balance and common sense with these people. Probably an impossibility. Thank you for that. Keep those messages coming, voice notes. We've got a full switchboard on this. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? But what about the economy? Is there any hope for the next 2 or 3 years, or are we doomed? Is this a race to the bottom? Has Rachel Reeves crashed the economy? Who better to ask than a very good friend of mine, Maurice Cousins, campaign director at Net Zero Watch and a man that's written at length about the economy. Hello, Maurice.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. Great to have you on the show. Is anyone buying the idea that the Iran war is the reason why we've got inflation?
Well, look, I mean, the Iran war is the proximate cause. There's no doubt about that. It has caused a shock to the system, but just focusing on the proximate cause ignores the much wider structural problem, which is that the UK really has had weak productivity now for a number of decades, and as a result, when you do get these sort of supply side shocks, like we've seen with COVID or when we see with the war war in Ukraine, and now more recently with the war in Iran, we are very exposed when that happens, and that means because we don't have the sort of the spare surge capacity, if you like, to ramp up production and to meet demand when it's required, and that basically means that you only really have one tool in your arsenal, which is to push up interest rates to suppress demand. But we have weak productivity in this country. A reason why we have weak productivity in this country is because of the high cost of energy. And the reason we have a high cost of energy is because of domestic policy choices that we have taken over the last 2 decades, in particular in relation to climate change and advancing renewable energy sources. So we've created, if you like, this doom loop, and it will continue to happen if we don't address the problem at source.
Most definitely. How irreversible could this government's net zero policies be by the time of the next election? Because I like the idea that a future administration, Maurice, will drill, baby, drill. But how possible will it be for them to do so?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, this government is doing an enormous amount of vandalism to the North Sea. They've obviously imposed as well a ban on onshore. To be clear, though, this did not just start under Labour. This began under the Tories, and I think that's important. But the Conservatives have embraced energy realism and come round to this. Yeah, I mean, we've got some really tough years ahead of us, and I think it's important for parties like Reform or the Conservatives that when they are promising that they are going to bring down bills, they need to do a better job of managing expectations, because turning this tanker around is going to take a lot of time and effort to do it. And bringing some of these jobs back that are really skilled is going to take some time. Restoring investor confidence in places like the North Sea is going to be a really difficult job to do.
You don't just call BP and say, hello, no. BP, start drilling tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. They need years of planning.
Absolutely. And, capital is very mobile. It's global. They don't have to be here. They can go anywhere else around the world. The rest of the world isn't copying us. The rest of the world, they recognize the benefits that fossil fuels bring, and they're only more than glad to be able to have those sort of skills that can help bring the energy benefits that you can get from that. But, you're right. It's going to take a very long time. And I think it's really important that for people like Robert Jenrick and Nigel Farage, but also Claire Coutinho and Kemi Badenoch, to be really upfront with people about this, because it's going to be one hell of a task to do it. But once it starts and we start to actually get it up and going, things could start to turn around quite quickly. But you've got to have the infrastructure in place and the production facilities there to do so.
And the goodwill of companies who need to trust the UK government that this country is a worthy investment, and you wouldn't trust this lot, would you? Maurice, briefly, before you go, are we looking at, let's say there's a future administration, perhaps it's Reform, perhaps it's the Tories, who knows, but a future administration committed to exploiting our own natural resources. Are we looking at sort of 2 to 3 years before we start to feel the benefit, do you think?
I wouldn't want to sort of comment on. I think it's going to take a bit of time, I think, for that to actually happen, and I think it'd be more than 2 to 3 years. But I mean, look, I think the way things are going here at the moment, in the 1970s, Labour started to introduce policies after 1976 when we had the IMF crisis. Where they started to you started to see some limited privatisation and cutbacks on sort of spending and things, because they had to confront reality. I think you actually call me an optimist, but I think even this government, with their net zero mania, will eventually have to confront reality at some point before the next election.
And so briefly, Maurice, do you think that net zero will be a dead political project in 10 years' time?
Oh, 100%. I have no doubt about that. I mean, this is not sustainable. I don't think, today we've got 40 Labour MPs writing to ministers saying that they want to see watering down of net zero policies. This is being challenged from within. People can see that this is not a rational response to an energy crunch. We need to be boosting supply, not constraining it. And, you know, all the myths that we've heard over the years about renewables will make us energy independent, more secure, cheaper energy, the physics just doesn't the physics of that model just does not stack up.
Yes, well, the progressive left, so-called, don't understand science or biology, do they? Morris, lovely to see you. Have a great weekend and we'll catch up soon. Morris Cousins is the campaign director at Net Zero Watch. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Alan is in Aberdeen, I should say. Hello, Alan.
Oh, yeah, good afternoon, Mark.
Good to have you on the show. What's your reaction to Dolan's dispatch? I'm very concerned that we're using poverty as an excuse for kids being on a screen for 5 hours a day or not knowing how to use a bathroom when they go to primary school.
Yeah, there is no such thing as poverty in Britain. Is there poor? Yes, there is. Why do you think half of the third world is coming to Britain? Yeah, it's because we're flooded with poverty, isn't it? There's no such thing. It is an excuse. Anybody that has been into IDP camps in the Middle East or been into Africa, hey, then you'll know what poverty is. It's just another excuse. It's another misused word. It's like genocide. You know, the people use the term genocide for something that's not a genocide, and it's the same with poverty. It's actually an insult to those that are actually living in actual poverty in the real world. It is an excuse. It's like everything else these days. We've got to have an excuse. But this also stems back to, as you say, it's parenting, but it's all gone wrong. The schools, teachers can't do anything. There's no discipline. The police can't do anything. We've lost total, complete control of kids. Nobody can say no. I mean, I brought up my child, and I said no, like yourself, many, many times, as much as you didn't want to, but you had to for the long-term benefit of the child. And how many times has my kid turned around, oh, I wish I listened to you, Dad? You know what I mean? And it's the same with yourself. But these days, people just, they have to have an excuse. Poverty is just another excuse term thrown in by the liberal left to allow kids to do whatever they want these days.
Alan, what a brilliant call. Plenty of truth bombs there. Have a good afternoon in beautiful Aberdeen, the Granite City. So much more to come, folks. Here's a voice note on kids and screen time. Sadia in Market Harborough.
Good afternoon, Mark. Regarding the question this afternoon on children and the use of internet, I have a 15-year-old teenager. I have done everything in my power to limit inappropriate apps, reduce screen time, lockdown Wi-Fi. She's got her own Wi-Fi that she's able to access. What she'll do is she'll take my phone. She'll manage to break the password somehow or the other. All it does is cause more arguments when you try and do this. So the more you try and limit teenagers in doing something, the more they'll push back, the more arguments you'll have, the more harassment you'll have to deal with. From Sadia in Market Harborough.
Well, Sadia, look, thank you for that. And I understand it's complex, and I think it's more difficult with teenagers, and that's partly because you can't control teenagers. And I think the thrust of today's Dolan's dispatch was about small children, you know, 5, 6, 7-year-olds with the iPad for 3 hours a night. And I will grant you, because I am the parent of teenagers, and they are a whole different ball game, and it is a challenge. And Sadia, you have to negotiate with teenagers, which, as you all agree, is like negotiating with ISIS. In fact, negotiating with ISIS is a pleasure compared to getting your kid to go and do some homework. I understand, but fundamentally, I'm really worried about how we're raising our kids. Sadia, thank you for your considered voice note. We've got more of those to come. But next up, here's a question that will send a little shockwave through Reform supporters. Has Nigel Farage's party peaked? This is Talk.
breaking news until breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 1:48. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Ian Collins. Back on breakfast tomorrow and Sunday. Doing breakfast on Monday as well. Lovely to have your company. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Alison is in beautiful County Antrim. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Mark.
Listen, what's your reaction to today's Dolan's dispatch? Because I think that we've lost the art of traditional parenting. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely, I think so. My kids were both in P7 before we allowed them to get mobile phones. And it was really like peer pressure that, you know...
And that would be year 7, that would be about 13 years of age. You made them wait until they were teenagers, is that right?
They would have been about, like, 11, I think.
Okay.
From recollection, yeah.
Oh, yes, the first year of secondary school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or something like that,
like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my kids both, like, sailed through primary school, but I noticed that it was more keeping an eye on their friendships and things in secondary school, you know, and trying to, like, negotiate the dynamics of those friendships. That was my greatest difficulty.
You were more focused on who they were hanging out with rather than how much screen time they had, because you feel that the biggest influence is their friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And just like kind of, you know, trying to make sure that they didn't get too much out of their depth, or, you know, because I realise that there are a lot of, you know, influences now that are probably quite negative for them to be looking at.
Well, you're so right. And if they've got friends that are looking at adult material, you know, adult films, if they've got friends that are interested in drugs or anything like that, then that's a big problem, isn't it? Because they want to blend in with their mates, Alison.
Yeah, definitely. I find that more so for my my son. My daughter wasn't really just so much that way, but my son was slightly more easily led, and I sometimes feared for what kind of place that was going to take him.
And
briefly, I kind of reined him back a bit.
You reined him. Well, that's parenting, isn't it? Alison, before I let you go, is there any excuse for a child going to school without a meal in their stomach, or not knowing how to use a toilet?
Absolutely not. No. My son was a bit more difficult to toilet train, but we got there. My daughter was a lot easier, thankfully. So I had an easier time with her. But, you know, like things like toothbrushing and things like that, I mean, that's just like basic parenting skills to me, isn't it? You know.
Well, I've no doubt you've done an excellent job. Alison, I love the call. Please call me again soon. Very considered thoughts there. And Alison saying we rely too much on tech to raise our kids. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Alison. Let's get to a bit of politics now. And two big stories, actually. We're going to talk about reform in just a second. But according to the Financial Times, Sir Keir Starmer is going to make the London Mayor Sadiq Khan a Lord, which opens the door to this rather controversial London mayor joining the cabinet. Let's get reaction from Alex Wilson, who is a Reform UK London Assembly member. Hi, Alex.
Good afternoon, Mark. Great to be with you.
What do you make of this story? Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, we've seen the story this morning, and it's kind of caught everyone by surprise, really, because if of all the people you'd have thought might be deserving of a peerage, I'm not sure that Sadiq Khan would be very high on a lot of our lists, because it's effectively a reward for failure. He's been mayor of London for a long time, and in that time, London is getting to be a less safe, less comfortable, less happy place to be. Well, you look at his record on policing, on transport. It's the most congested city in Europe. On housing, it's impossible to get on the housing ladder now, whether that's for purchase or rent. And of course, on policing and crime, he's shutting police station front counters right across the capital in clear breach of one of his manifesto pledges. And as a result, crime's out of control. With the phone theft hotspot capital of Western Europe, rape reported every hour. Only 2% of burglaries ever get solved and result in a court summons or a charge. And knife crime's up 2/3 since he was elected. And all that time, his share of the council tax has gone up by over 3/4 since he was elected in 2016. So we're getting less delivery for more cost. We have a cost of living crisis we all know about, cost of government crisis. We also have a cost of Khan crisis, and it's playing out on London streets every single day.
Cost of Khan crisis.
That's worthy of a peerage. It's ridiculous.
That's all. I tell you what, that's a very nifty little slogan there. Cost of Khan crisis is very strong. It could stick. But Alex, what are the politics behind this? Is the Prime Minister trying to save his own job by bringing a figure like Khan into his cabinet? And do my viewers and listeners have to get their heads around the possibility that Sadiq Khan could replace him as leader of the Labour Party and become our Prime Minister?
Well, what a terrifying thought that would be. Look, Starmer's doing it. Well, I think this shows, to be honest, everything that's wrong about the honour system and the way that it's used for political reward, either being used to reward cronies, or in this case, it looks like as a way of trying to buy off a critic. And he tried that with giving him a knighthood only a year or so ago. That hasn't obviously worked. So now he's trying it with the peerage as well. Look, what is it they say? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. But yeah, if Khan was in the Lords, then yes, in theory, he could become Prime Minister, although I think it's very unlikely we would have a Prime Minister from the Lords. It hasn't happened for centuries. But no, it's crazy. But if he was given a serious job in government, then surely he'd have to step down as Mayor of London, and then we'd have a London-wide by-election, which would be a really exciting contest. Politics is very volatile at the moment. I know the Greens would be looking to do well. We would be looking to do very well. We've got a dress for all this on the 7th of May, where all 32 London boroughs are up for election, and we're looking to make real progress as a party, and put ourselves forward as being the big challengers to Labour, whether that's Khan or whoever else.
Now, Sir Sadiq Khan is very clear. He's got a resounding mandate to transform the fortunes of London. He'd point to 3 victories at the mayoral elections as demonstration that he's doing an excellent job, but it's all about opinions, isn't it? Alex, what about reform? You guys have peaked, haven't you? That's it now.
Not at all. Just last night, we won another by-election. So in council by-elections up and down the country, near enough every week, we're still making gains. So that's nearly 70 gains since the elections last year, which were a huge success. We've led in over 250 national opinion polls. We're still very much on track.
You hit the old glass ceiling, haven't you? Has it left a bruise on your head?
No, not at all. Look,
this is as good as it gets, isn't it? You're done and dusted. That's it now. It's like Arsenal. You've got your points. Time to throw the towel in.
No, not at all. Look, there's 5,000 council seats up for grabs in just a few weeks' time. Let me come on your show after those results are declared, and we'll have a chat about that then, and we'll see what's what. But the projections are looking really, really positive. We've got thousands of candidates fighting hard in their communities up and down the country, and looking to make real progress and follow up. As I say, these by-elections, week on week on week, we are making real progress in all corners of this country.
Alex, you're an old friend of mine, and I know you love a robust debate. So let's bring Mark into this. Mark is in Lincolnshire. And Mark, afternoon.
Afternoon, Mark.
And what do you think? I've got a very nice man on the line. It's Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. This is a politician, by the way, Mark, that's going places. But do you take the view that Reform have peaked?
Yeah, absolutely I do, Mark. I think the only thing I can see Reform doing at this point is going downwards. I think they're making mistake after mistake. And I just don't have any faith that they're going to particularly go anywhere. I mean, they're going to do really well in the locals, because there's no real competition at the end of the day. But overall, they've got some real problems, I think, Reform. Because, as I've said before, the messaging's really mixed on so many things. You know, they've been found out lying about, you know, not increasing council tax and then actually increasing council tax. These are all things that voters do remember, you know. So, as I say, I think they've got some real problems going forward.
And Mark, would you, in principle, would you be a Reform supporter?
No, absolutely not.
Who would you support? Who has your backing?
I was originally Reform, you know,
back in the day,
or so back.
Yeah.
I fell out a lot with Nigel just from his own actions. He's his own worst enemy, Nigel. I'm a member of Restore Britain.
Okay.
I see them as the future. I think their growth is really exciting. People like to pretend they don't exist.
Okay.
At the end of the day, they've just surpassed 120,000 members.
Well, Mark, a very, very interesting call, and I appreciate the intervention. Mark there in Lincolnshire, big fan of Rupert Lowe and Restore UK. I think Mark feels they are the true right-wing party of this country, Alex.
Well, I would have to disagree, as you'd expect me to. Look, Lincolnshire is where we won that council by-election yesterday, so it's still an area where we're doing very, very well. And look, I know Restore is now a thing. They've just got their electoral commission registration confirmed. Let's see how many candidates they have in May. I don't think it'll be that many, and I don't think any will win. So we've got a real opportunity here to reshape the entirety of British politics. We've had Conservative Labour, swinging backwards and forwards for generations. There's a real opportunity to smash that.
Okay.
We can only do that with reform.
Alex, what a delight to have you on the show. Thank you for your time. We'll catch up soon. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, happy Friday, one and all. Top of the afternoon to you. It is 3 minutes past 2. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Ian Collins. And breaking this afternoon, Rachel Reeves is the real petrol profiteer, according to some of Britain's top business chiefs, as they attack the Chancellor for raking in millions from higher prices at the pumps. And as the Chancellor points to events in the Middle East, can she really blame the war in Iran for Britain's crumbling economy? And what about this? Has Sir Keir Starmer destroyed the special relationship? We'll be going straight to the United States, Washington, D.C. and Margaret Thatcher's former top advisor. Also ask her, what would she make, Margaret Thatcher? What would she make of Nigel Farage? Would Margaret Thatcher be a supporter of Reform UK? Now, my priority for the next 2 hours, I should say, is to get your opinions on the radio and on the telly. My phone number is 03444991000. The brilliant Faith is taking your calls. Book your place on the show. Now, in today's Dolan's Dispatch, I was talking about the fact that the tech companies are being blamed because the kids are spending too long on a screen. Well, wait a minute. Is it really the fault of Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg? Isn't it a parent's job to decide when a child watches the screen and when and for how long? Let me know your thoughts on this. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? 03444991000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. Now, let me bring you up to speed on some more breaking news. As you'll have heard in our bulletin, an Afghan asylum seeker has been jailed for 15 years after abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton. Ahmad Mulakil was found guilty of rape and 2 counts of sexual assault following a trial last month, having already admitted a further rape charge. He was also convicted of child abduction and taking an indecent video of the girl by the jury at Warwick Crown Court. Let's get reaction now from broadcaster, political commentator and former Conservative MP, Sir Michael Fabricant. Hello, Sir Michael.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Well, indeed, great to have you on the show. We'll get to lots of stories, including the economy, the war in Iran and much besides. But I need to ask you about this breaking news story. It's devastating. And the aggravating factor here, Michael, is that this person shouldn't have been in the country, and that's the problem.
That's right, and from a very different culture to our own. Now, I'm going to be very careful now and not generalise, nor should anyone else generalise. Sure. Or make any great political advantage out of what has happened. Clearly, there are people who come here illegally. Actually, nobody should come here illegally, and we should stop them. But that's easier said than done. Starmer is rapidly finding out, or has found out. But it's quite clear that there are cultures where women and other people, minors, are not treated with the respect and the dignity that, of course, we do in Anglo-Saxon, Judeo-Christian countries. We found this with the grooming gangs in northern England, and one of the biggest crimes, I think, is not just the actual crimes that are committed on women and young children, but the fact that the police have chosen not to intervene for fear of being accused of racist.
You're absolutely right, and some of this is cultural. This monster who's been jailed for 12 years may not have been able to understand the sheer depravity of his crimes based upon where he grew up.
That's right, but that doesn't condone him at all because, you know, I'm not a religious person at all, but I sort of think people do know the difference between right and wrong. You know, when you have consenting adults doing whatever they want to do, that's fine. But to do that to a young girl who is clearly not consenting because she's been traumatized is clearly wrong. And this person deserves everything he gets. Incidentally, I mean, one wonders whether in his country he would either have been lauded or he would have had, you know, might have had his head cut off. Good heavens knows, you know. Cultures are very, very different. That's why I always find it marginally amusing when Queers for Palestine are demonstrating when, you know, if they were to walk hand in hand in Gaza what would happen to them is the same that happens to Palestinians, sadly, who turn out to be gay, and that's either beheaded or thrown off a roof.
What's strange, Sir Michael, is the progressive left will look at a horrific story like this one, this conviction of an asylum seeker for the abduction and rape of a child, and they'll say, well, there are British people with white skin who commit these crimes too. But that misses the point, doesn't it?
It does miss the point. I'm afraid if you look at the stats, and I don't have them in front of me, so I'm not going to go into them now, there are certain cultures where they are a small percentage of the population, and yet a huge percentage of people who commit this sort of crime and who are serving prison sentences, and others who are just not members of our community because all they do is claim benefits. You know, it's very, very difficult. I remember a friend of mine used to be involved in immigration and customs, and he was saying, you know, we do plotting of types of people who are likely to be either smuggling or committing crimes or whatever, profiling they call it. And then they went through a phase where they couldn't use profiling because it seemed to be anti-black or anti-Middle Eastern or anti-whatever. But sadly, it's a matter of fact.
Well, indeed, and I'm glad you're so cautious and judicious about not throwing statistics and figures around if they're not backed up. So how about this, Sir Michael, from the Ministry of Justice? This is data obtained from the Ministry of Justice by the Centre for Migration Control, who found that foreign nationals accounted for a quarter of sexual assault convictions on women in 2024. The numbers don't lie. Indian nationals accounted for the highest number in foreign national convictions in 2024, followed by Romanians and Pakistani men. This is a conversation we need to have.
That's right. Only 10% of people in the United Kingdom, I believe, we'll have to look up the stats, I don't have them in front of me, are actually of non-Anglo-Saxon, if you want to use that word. That's a phrase, actually, the French use. I rather like it. Of non-Anglo-Saxon, white, European, whatever you want to call it, Caucasian origin. So it's clear from the stats you've just given that a far greater percentage of that minority group are committing the crimes. And to have a situation where people are coming in illegally, as Ahmed Mulahil did, the man who's just been convicted, demonstrates, you know, how we have lost control of our borders. And it's not just Labour, it's the Conservatives too. If Reform gets into power, I think they'll find it equally difficult to actually control it, or indeed restore Britain.
Now, Nigel Farage has been calling out these issues for many years. Have you had your head turned by Reform UK, Sir Michael? You're an iconic figure within the Conservative Party, but might you look at your position and back Farage's insurgent project?
I would do it I wouldn't join them. I have no interest in joining them. And I'm a member of the Conservative Party. Now, what I'm about to say may get me thrown out of the Conservative Party, but I'm going to tactically vote. For various reasons, I've got a vote in 3 different areas where I pay council tax in the UK. I can only vote once, of course, in a general election, because the law is you can only vote once in one assembly. But because there are separate assemblies for local elections, I have the capability of voting 3 times. Now, actually, in Lichfield, where I am now, we don't have elections in May, which is a blessed relief. But I do have in the 2 other areas, and I will look at the polling. And in one of the areas, the Conservatives have done extremely badly. It's in Wales. And I think I might be tempted to vote Reform there, because it's either them or Plaid Cymru.
What would you say to those who believe that Reform UK now, Sir Michael, are the true Conservatives, scrapping net zero, unilaterally stopping the boats, bringing down mass migration, ending wokery in our public institutions, cutting taxes?
Well, I love their policies. I do. And then you might ask, so why aren't I voting for them? Why don't I join them? I just don't think they're going to deliver them. I really don't. I mean, I'm in Staffordshire, Lichfield's in Staffordshire, and I think it's now just today the 4th or the 5th Reform councillor who's been struck off for various reasons by reform. We're now on our third leader of Staffordshire County Council, which is reform, over the last year. I mean, I'm afraid the calibre of some of the people in reform are just not up to it. Having said that, I tend to identify a lot more with people in reform than some of the people in the Conservative Party, who I just think are Lib Dems.
So, Michael, why do you think the political right on both sides of the pond are split over the war in Iran?
I think we were very unwise, and by we I say the Conservative Party, not to stick to the line that Kemi Badenoch originally had, which is that we should support the war. Now, that does not mean putting feet on the ground, soldiers' feet on the ground. That does not mean, I'm trying to think of other
airstrikes over Iran, which the President of the United States never asked us to do.
Exactly. What they asked us to do was to provide fueling stops at British air bases, which Starmer initially refused to do. And then he changed his mind 2 days later. And all this guff about, it's for defensive purposes only, well, it hasn't affected or hasn't actually caused the Iranians to believe in any of it. Let's be clear about this. If you say, we're not at war, why is it then that Iran has fired missiles at 2 military bases, which are British sovereign territory, on Cyprus and Diego Garcia, and he is causing insurrection here in the UK? As you know, we've got to be controlled in what we say because of sub judice laws, but people have been arrested for certain events, and now there's a whole question about to what degree Iranians have been using the internet and bribes to try and cause insurrection in the UK.
Most definitely, there are also concerns that the Iranian regime is using small boats to get spies onto British soil. It's dark stuff, Sir Michael. But what about the US president? It seems that he's been stung by Britain's lack of support in the early stages of this war in Iran. Let's take a listen to the leader of the free world.
We're always going to be there, or at least we were. I don't know about anymore, to be honest with you. I have to be honest. We were always there when they needed help. We always would have been there when they needed help. I mean, think of it. We're there to protect Europe from Russia. In theory, it doesn't affect us. We have an ocean, big, fat, beautiful ocean. But we're there to protect NATO, to protect them from Russia. But they're not there to protect us. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense.
It seems like the president, Sir Michael, is genuinely hurt by the lack of support from NATO countries, from the European Union, and from Britain.
And from Britain in particular, for 2 reasons. Firstly, his mother is British, and also he has investments in the United Kingdom, like so many others, including his golf courses, but other investments too. And because he's a man who's interested, I know, in history. He brought back Churchill, for example, the bust of Churchill, into the Oval Office, which had been taken away by Biden and before that by Obama. So he loves the relationship. He loves coming to Britain. He loves the royal family. But he feels betrayed, and I can't blame him. You were talking earlier about what Margaret Thatcher's relationship would have been like with him. I don't think there would have been any doubt whatsoever that Thatcher would have immediately said, of course you can use our bases, which of course is what she did when they struck Libya all those years ago. And they're doing it now anyway. And this is so typical of Keir Starmer. You know, he says one thing and then 2 days later completely reverses it, because they are now using our bases. No, he feels utterly betrayed. Of course, he gets the details wrong. I mean, he was saying we were going to lend a few aircraft carriers and then we didn't. Oh, boy, I live for the days when we might still have lots of aircraft carriers. We've got 2, one of which is in dry dock and the other one is somewhere miles away. However, you know, his bitterness is felt very, very strongly. And although they take their time to come to our aid, they do always come to our aid when we need them. And let's face it, we are Anglo-Saxons, as I was saying earlier, like so many in the United States, we speak the same language. I remember going to a law lecture once at the University of Southern California and hearing all about how American law is English law, which is the fount of the legal system, their jurisprudence. So, you know, we share so much in common, the language, the legal system, even the sense of humour. That's one of the reasons, by the way, I was so keen to leave the European Union. To be governed by people in Brussels seemed completely the wrong thing to me.
Sir Michael, a real treat to have you on the show. Thank you for your valuable time. Sir Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP and now broadcaster and political commentator. What about that? Has Starmer destroyed the special relationship? Can it be fixed? Do you think that if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, he can repair our bond with the United States? Let me know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. Faith is taking your calls. But next up, is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? This is Talk.
Breaking news and Talk Breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Ben in Stockwell, who says the erratic president of the United States and his genocidal mate are killing babies and children, and yet you want us to support them. Vince says, hello Mark, rape is technically illegal in Afghanistan, but in practice it's rarely prosecuted. Victims face immense risks, including honour killings or being charged with zina, which is adultery or sex outside of a marriage, when reporting rape. And therefore, the progressive left don't bat an eyelid that we're happy for these people to enter the country illegally, including an Afghan asylum seeker who has today been jailed for abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Jane is in Gloucestershire. Hello, Jane.
Good afternoon, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Lovely to have you on the show. What are your thoughts about this?
Yes, my thought is, when I was brought up, manners don't cost anything. So it doesn't matter if you haven't got a lot of money or you're really rich. At the end of the day, you don't buy manners, you're taught manners.
Is it an insult to people at the lower end of the economic ladder to claim that poverty is an excuse for not sending your child to school with food in their stomach or knowing how to use a toilet?
I think that is down to the parents. It's nothing to do with how much money you've got. If you're willing to have a child and bring a child up, then you must be able to actually teach that child. It's your responsibility. It's not the schools, it's not the governments, it's not about how much money you've got. It's what you install in your children.
And this is something that people, Jane, living in the third world in their hundreds of millions don't struggle with, and they've got a lot less than we do.
Yes, exactly. And I don't know why we have to tiptoe around this. It's just ridiculous. It's common sense.
And Jane, as I mentioned in today's Dolan's Dispatch, the welfare bill, Jane, is now higher than the entire tax take of the country. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't be more generous. And yet you've still got kids having healthy teeth extracted because of their diet. You've got obesity. They're going to school. They've not had their breakfast. They're not wearing the right school uniform. They don't know how to behave. It's not good, is it?
Yeah. No, I think we've got it all wrong. We have definitely got it wrong. This country has changed so much. And I put it down to people need to take responsibility for what they do. And they don't. They take the easy option and blame someone else. When at the end of the day, take responsibility.
This feels cultural somehow, doesn't it, Jane? That the culture of the country has changed, that attitudes and values have changed, that back in the day you were expected to raise your children correctly, teach them right from wrong?
Yes, exactly. I mean, doesn't every parent do that? We were taken out as children to restaurants, but we knew we had to ask before we could leave the table. And we didn't run around or anything because we knew we'd be in trouble. Whereas today, you seem to, children are just allowed to do what they want to do in case you do something to stop their progression. But they have to learn it's not all about them. There are other people in this world to consider.
Completely right. Jane, what a great call. I will say your parents did a great job. Thank you for your articulate thoughts. Call me again soon, Jane, and have a lovely Friday. Mandy is in Northumberland. Hi, Mandy.
Hello, Mark. Great show.
Thank you.
I was listening to your dispatch this morning, and I was born in 1975.
Oh, yes. Do you know, you're a little baby. You're a year younger than me. I'm 74.
Oh, I look bloody older than you.
I doubt that, Mandy. Anyway, we were born in a bit of a golden era, weren't we? The mid-70s?
Yes, yeah. And do you know what, Mark? How things have changed. I've got two grown-up children, and I try to install values and respect into them. But, when I was growing up, I went to school, clean uniform, hair done, teeth brushed. I could read, write. My mum spent loads of time with me. And if I was cheeky at school, it wasn't the wrath of the teachers. It was the wrath of my parents when I got home. And, you know, we had a house phone, one of them dial phones, and there was a lock on it, and it was in the living room. So if anybody ever rang you, they could hear you know, what was the conversation and what have you. And it's just all gone, hasn't it? Like, it's quite sad.
And what do you make of this screen time? Because, Mandy, I understand that parenting's not easy. I've got 2 of my own, and there have been occasions when I've let them watch something because it's bought me an hour off, either to do some work, send an email, or maybe just a break. You know, we're all human beings. It's not easy. So I'm not against the iPad or a TV show here and there. But I drive around, Mandy, and I see kids in the back of the car, and there's a screen in the headrest of the car. And I'm thinking, could you not talk to your kids?
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I wasn't brought up with any of that because there was nothing like that. But my 2 girls, I wouldn't let them have their mobiles at the table, in a restaurant. Oh, and I was hated for it. But it's so rude. But it's so easy as well for people now. You know, I've got great nephews that are very, very young, and oh my goodness, they're never off.
It's sad, isn't it?
Their phones, and I'm not judging anyone. You know, I haven't been the best mother at all, but oh goodness, no.
Well, listen, Mandy, I'm sure you did your best, and you sound like a really brilliant person, and I've got no doubt that your adult children will thank you for what you did. And like I've said, and we've both said, times have changed, and the attitude to parenting is very different now, and it's the job of a computer or a tablet or a phone to raise your kids. Mandy, let's catch up soon, and happy birthday when it comes. Mandy, by the way, a tender 51-year-old. How about that? Matt is in Cheshire. Afternoon, Matt.
Hi, good afternoon, Mark. A pleasure to speak to you.
You too, Matt. Lovely to have you on the show. What's going down?
I don't have children. I'm in my early 50s, but I've watched decent, well-bred people I know bring up children, and many of them don't have the courage to discipline or to establish boundaries like previous generations. I call it cool dad syndrome, where dads 30 to 50 are so busy trying to stay relevant amongst the friends and sort of stuck in the youth almost.
Yes.
That they forget that their role is shaping the character and behaviour of their children. There's also been a negative effect on the indigenous population from third world parenting and their children, and the savagery and laziness that sometimes goes with that. This has been force-fed onto once decent civilized communities via mass immigration. And as a whole, most parents where I am do the same great job as many did in the 70s and 80s. But there's a generation of lazy, irresponsible parents, many of whom are not fit to be parents. And they are morally and financially incapable of the qualities and strengths needed to raise good-mannered, intelligent children.
Matt, would you say that there is a British way to raise children and we've lost that?
I can sum it up in firm but fair, Mark. I think I think you're a similar generation, sort of 70s generation.
Correct.
And I think a clip round the ear, you know, if you're getting a bit big for your boots. And for me, discipline is everything. I went to an all-boys school. I was 6. I know you're a tall guy. I was 6 foot when I was 14 years of age.
Wow.
And I think you were probably even taller than that.
About that, yeah. But you were probably a bit broader than me. You know what I mean? I was a bit lanky and skinny, Matt.
Well, I didn't grow, you see. I think you probably grew when you were older. I stayed at 6 foot.
That's not too bad. That's a male model height. Did you know that, Matt?
No, I didn't know that, no.
Apparently. That's why I never made it in that field. I mean, look, the bottom line is, can we fix this? Can we turn this ship around? Can we heal society and start raising children properly, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who sees it from the outside, we just need to go back to what was always there. The year I left school, they removed smacking children from schools. I was the last year in school in '89 I used to get punched in the arm. I used to get pulled by my sideboards. And if I got lippy, I deserved it. It wasn't torture or like brutality. It was a young lad who was being lippy, getting what he deserved to put him in line. And we're becoming...
Yeah. Well, the thing is...
Becoming a nation... Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no, we're becoming a nation. Go on, Matt.
A nation of like cowards and sort of just absolute morons who allow people like Tony Blair and Keir Starmer to shape our own households.
And isn't the point, Matt, that children crave boundaries and that the word no is a word of love? Can I have ice cream before my dinner? No. Can I run around on that busy road? No. Can I skip my homework or brushing my teeth? No.
I couldn't agree more, Mark. Like everything in the animal kingdom, if you don't give it any boundaries, it will disrespect you and see you as an idiot. And children, like you say, they need boundaries. They need to know what they can and cannot do. And if you're basically just a wet lettuce that lets them walk all over you, then that's exactly what will happen.
Matt, what a shame you didn't have kids. You sound like a rock of sense, but I really appreciate your call. Matt in Cheshire there, a very statuesque, 6 foot in height he is as well. Thank you for your call, Matt. So much more to come on that. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? So much to get through. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
2:36, Mark Dolan with you, in for the brilliant Ian Collins. I'm back on breakfast tomorrow, Sunday and Monday, and some pretty troubling news for you. Britain faces being hit harder than any other G7 country as the Middle East conflict rages. This according to a new forecast. The outlook will heap pressure on Chancellor Rachel Reeves to deliver tax rises or cut spending at this year's budget to balance the books. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, in its interim report, says the UK economy will grow by just 0.7% this year. That marks a 0.5% downgrade. So growth down and, wait for it, inflation up. In fact, they expect inflation to average 4% this year, a 1.5% increase on the forecast at the end of last year. Well, the metrics aren't good. Let's get reaction and analysis from Ryan Saby, the economics editor at The Sun. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Very well. Great to have you on the show. How much can the Chancellor blame the Iran war for this bleak outlook?
Well, I think in the sort of broadest sense, there looked like there was going to be some kind of potential recovery at the beginning of this year, and 2026, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves says this was going to be the year that Britain turned a corner. But you look at the forecast, I mean, drastic forecast downgrade from December last year. And I think in part, you can point to things that the government have done that haven't helped things. But I think in part, you can say this is all down, well, most of it is down to the Iran war and the fact that what we've seen is a massive downgrade in growth, the surge in inflation. One of the big things, it all comes down to energy prices. We are so reliant on overseas energy that when we buy that energy at a higher price, there's this ripple effect across the whole of the economy, and prices just go up. And the inflation figure overall, it was only going to be 2.5% for this year, but now it's going to be 4%. So, just when we thought things were going to be perhaps a little bit easier, it's still going to be very, very tough.
Is Britain, Ryan, staring down the barrel of a recession?
Well, I certainly think we're kind of on that cusp of recession. You'll just see how the figures pan out really over the next year. We are on the cusp. It may happen. It's kind of 50-50. There will still be growth in the economy, but that growth will be minimal. I mean, we are talking proper sluggish economy, and it's been it's been horrendous and difficult for Britain for the last couple of years. Lots of policies haven't helped. The national insurance rise, for a start, has meant that companies have felt they just can't hire, they can't invest. So that's been very, very difficult. But I think one of the real difficult things will be come the end of the year when the Chancellor has to try and balance the books. She's only got headroom of around £20 billion. You take out when it comes to higher interest rates, higher inflation, lower growth, you are going to be looking at a big chunk of that disappearing. And if she wants to maintain that financial cushion, there aren't too many places where you can look to do that, raising taxes, cutting spending, and she really doesn't want to borrow anymore. That really will send a very poor message to the financial markets. And obviously we've seen borrowing costs rise in recent weeks. So she is in a bind.
Indeed. I mean, of course, tax rises are a bit of a race to the bottom, aren't they, Ryan? Because economic output will likely drop further. And let's not forget it was 0% in January, significantly ahead of that invasion of Iran, the US and Israeli action in Iran to remove their potential to produce nuclear weapons. So the fundamentals aren't great. Do you think it's spending cuts that are the inevitable lever that she will pull?
Well, she's been under so much pressure ever since Labour really came to power. I mean, what you've seen is you've got this huge welfare bill, and you think that if she wanted to try and find some money, she could try and look there. But what did we see last summer when Labour and the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, tried to reduce that welfare bill? Their backbenchers, but they really didn't like it, and they rebelled in big numbers. And the Labour government just walked away from it. They didn't want to know. Now they have set up a couple of reviews to look into this, but it's really just kicking it down the long grass. Can she look to other departments, Whitehall departments, to save some money? Well, if you speak to cabinet ministers, they will say they've been cut to the bone as it stands. So it's just getting more and more difficult to find spending cuts within Whitehall. She'll have to swing the axe somewhere, but it is extremely difficult. And don't forget, she's got to try and find a lot of money for the defence budget. Lots of talk of military chiefs asking for the best part of £28 billion over the next few years. Every which way she turns, it's very, very difficult.
It most definitely is. Nigel Farage, Ryan, as you'll be aware, thinks that some kind of economic meltdown and economic events could provoke an early general election, perhaps next year. Does that have any credence?
Well, I have thought about this and how this could happen several times. Now, to get to a general election, the MPs actually have to vote for it. So just look at the polls. Labour doing extremely dismally in that poll. Are those MPs going to vote to lose effectively, many of them will lose their jobs, lose their salaries, have to find another job. Are they actually going to vote for that? Now, it may be that there is some existential event that affects the Labour Party that sees a general. We just fall into a general election, but I find it quite hard to see how that happens because, of course, you'll have you'll have the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, and everyone else voting for a general election. I just can't see Labour with their massive 160-seat majority voting for it.
Ryan, how does this play out? Because if Sir Keir Starmer ceases to be Prime Minister, he will likely be replaced, won't he, by somebody to the left of him politically and economically. But we know that the nation's credit card has been maxed out. We've got the cost of servicing our debt, the interest alone, 100 billion plus. We've got non-existent growth, really, the return of unemployment and sticky inflation. It's hard to be optimistic for the next couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, you look at the sort of candidates who are lining up to replace Sir Keir and run through the names: Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting, Shabana Mahmood. Now he's not in Parliament as well, but Andy Burnham, and the sort of comments you had from Andy Burnham ahead of the Labour Party conference last year. He said he didn't want the government should be sort of in hock to the bond markets, and I thought one thing which would mean potentially lead to higher borrowing costs if that the policies that they went down. I thought it was very interesting over the last few days. We see that Angela Rayner has been talking to big banks in the city to try and calm their nerves if there was a chance of her going for that leadership. So I think if people were worried about Angela Rayner, she's doing her very best to sort of say, settle down. I'm not going to go on a borrowing spree, so everything will be all right with me. But someone like Wes Streeting will probably be under the guise of where Rachel Reeves is when it comes to economics, and so same with Shabana Mahmood. So you do have a real split within the party. When push comes to shove, if big projects need finding money for, and pay rises across the public sector, emergencies that just happen, and could someone like Angela Rayner, if she was Prime Minister, just turn on the spending taps? Let's see. But as we sit here, it could be a good few months away.
Most definitely. Ryan, always enjoy your work in the Sun newspaper. Ryan Saby is its economics editor. Absolutely brilliant for economic stories, I've got to say, both the paper itself and the website, thesun.co.uk. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Do you want to have a chat now or after the break? Lovely Finley. Let's go for a call right now. Bridget's in Suffolk. Hello, Bridget.
Hello, Mark. I've been listening to your programme, and I do think there could be also poverty in time for parents to give their children more time, because sometimes they're working.
Yeah.
And they haven't got the time for the time that obviously I had for when I brought my children up. So I'm not saying that I'm wonderful, glorious, perfect parent, but sometimes when you look at parents, it doesn't seem to be the time. And, it's not poverty because if you are on benefits, you're richer than somebody who works.
Yes. So you're concerned, you think that working families struggle to raise their kids because they just don't have the time. If they're holding down 2 or 3 jobs, when are they going to read to their kids? When are they going to brush their teeth? When are they going to cook?
There's no excuse for a child not learning. I was a nanny. I worked as a nanny for many, many years. There's no excuse whatsoever that a child does not know how to brush its teeth. It's part of, it's innate in you to. The child should know how to eat by the time you're there 2 at least, or even 18 months. I'd go younger.
So do you have sympathy? Do you have sympathy for families with parents, working all the hours that God sends? Is that a reasonable excuse?
I think now, if they want to have that house, it tends to be two incomes that will give them that house.
Yeah.
So, but then they do have obviously support with grandparents. You know, I sort of look at it all, but I'm wondering, because you're saying it's poverty, but I'm wondering, you know, where is it coming from? You know, is it sort of a certain group, a demographic of people? So I'm not too sure where that figure of it's poverty with money. It's just time, I think, as well.
So you don't think that poverty is an excuse for bad parenting by the sounds of it, Bridget?
No, absolutely not. I'm like yourself, had Irish parents.
Yeah.
We didn't have much, but we were well fed and we were clean. I mean, the washing machine was constantly on. We had to always wash our hands, like good manners at the table. We automatically cleared up our plates. We all had jobs to do in the house to keep, because, you know, my dad was working. My mum then went out in the evening to work in a biscuit factory. You know, so,
not an easy
yeah.
life. And of course, let's not forget, Bridget, after the Second World War, even in the 1950s, we still had wartime rationing, but kids went to school correctly dressed, with their hair brushed, clean teeth, with a breakfast in their stomach.
Yeah, we certainly did. I mean, I'm a family of 5, you know, they came over from Ireland, but like the Jamaicans, but everyone was turned out for school. You probably had a hole in your socks and, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we were clean. We always washed our teeth. We always had a wash, had a bath. You know, there's just no excuse for it. It's people that it's either extreme laziness or they've just got no know-how. They're not sort of given the demographic of where this is happening and who are actually the parents.
Bridget, do you feel that mass immigration has seen a decline in the quality of parenting in this country?
Well, I don't know where that demographic's coming from, what ethnicity, do you know? But parents should, you know, I cannot believe, you know, because as soon as the child, you know when a child's ready to go on a potty, because they've got indicators, and you just think, right, I'll have a few days at home. We don't go out anywhere. And then, you know, we didn't have the option these days. They've got these potties you can take with you, but in my day we didn't. So I was literally at home for a week probably. So I was there always for when you were potty, you know, toileting a child.
And briefly, Bridget, with the clock against us, you were a nanny. Can we reinstill these values? Can we become great parents again and fix our society, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because I worked for footballers, I worked in Surrey, I worked for lawyers, and obviously the tablets and the phones were in. But I had one rule: they did the homework. If they did all what they were doing, then I gave them 30 minutes, but they could use that 30 minutes either on any screen, being a TV or their phone, or they could bank that half hour. So then sometimes they say, I'm going to bank it, and then sort of come Friday, they'd have like 2 hours or more, and they want to watch the telly. That's how I...
That sounds that's great parenting, Bridget, and that's what children love: boundaries, discipline, rules. And Bridget, you've done an amazing job. Bridget, please call me again soon. Really enjoyed your company this afternoon. Bridget, a former nanny who says that poverty is not an excuse for bad parenting. Much more to come. This is Talk.
breaking news until breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We do need to go back to traditional values, and I think that some devices could help, because my brilliant producer Finlay has just stolen something from Virgin Radio, which is our sister station. He reckons he's got permission. We'll see about that. I'll be asking senior management. But he's just produced a toilet seat cover. It's a cover that goes on the toilet. It looks like something out of Buckingham Palace. And let me say, I'm deeply, deeply concerned about the implications of this being used at Finlay's flat, which is populated by a couple of other lads. It's the stud pad. But this is the device that he's just acquired from Virgin Radio. And I'm pleased to say it's not been used yet. Otherwise, I wouldn't be holding it if you're watching us on YouTube. But it goes on the toilet seat. And I've got to say, I think it's an accident waiting to happen. Right. Let's talk about poverty. Is it an excuse? Is it an excuse for bad parenting? Nicola has called the show. Hello, Nicola.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm really well, Nicola. How are things in Spain, where you're calling from us at the moment?
Very lovely, thank you very much.
Well, look, I'm sure it is. You're lucky to be there. What do you make about this story now? You've got tech giants who are being sued because children are spending too long on the screen. Is it not the parents' job to police that?
Absolutely. And I think this poverty issue, I don't think you can put it down to poverty. I think it goes right across the board. I've got family members who are very well off and they have no discipline with their children whatsoever. They cannot sit at a table to eat their food unless they've got their iPads in front of them. Or they're sitting with a plate of food on the carpet next to them whilst watching TV. The parents are more inclined to make sure they look nice, their hair's groomed, their designer clothes, and all the rest of it. And I forgot to feed you. Never mind. At least you look good, sort of thing. And it drives me absolutely potty. My kids are in their 30s now, but I had to go back to work when my firstborn was 5 weeks old. My second was 10 weeks old.
Wow.
And because, you're talking 30 odd years ago, we didn't have the maternity leave and pay that we do now. But I always made sure they were fed, they were dressed as much as I could nicely. I always read them a bedtime story. I always disciplined them. If they didn't want to eat at the table, they didn't eat. Simple as.
Yeah.
We could always take them out to restaurants because they were very, very well behaved. I wouldn't want to take the other members of family out to a restaurant because I'd be so embarrassed.
Oh, it's damning, isn't it, Nicola? It feels like cultural decline.
I think it's laziness. I really do. Yeah, I really do think there's an element, and we're going further and further down that track. That it's not really up to me. I know I'm their parent, but I don't really need to do it because somebody else will take over. And the worst part of it is one of the members of the family who is so disruptive, so terrible, because of bad parenting. They've now got her, she's apparently got ADHD.
Right.
And they are now receiving, I can't remember what it is, it's either £400 or £450 a month to help with her ADHD. And I'm like, she hasn't got it. I worked in the NHS for over 30 years. She hasn't got ADHD.
Yeah.
But they're benefiting from it, and it makes me so angry. You don't have to have money to look after your children.
What a damning sentence. Nicola, really enjoyed your call as well. Thank you so much for joining us live from Spain. Common sense in droves. Well, that's appropriate because Talk is the home of common sense. I think you'll agree. Joanna in Salisbury, hi Mark, I was left with no money but a house with a mortgage with 3 girls, 4, 10 and 11 years old, that were already well able to do everything. We all moved into 1 bedroom, rented the rooms out to 7 students at a time, 12 to 18 years. I was responsible for breakfast, dinners, packed lunches, laundry for 10 children and all the activities that they had to go to. I was the only adult. My girls always had clean ironed clothes, food and brushed teeth, etc. I used to be up at 5 in the morning, rarely went to bed before midnight, but everything was done and bills paid. That, Joanna, sounds like good parenting. Annunciata Rees-Mogg is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
2 minutes past 3. Lovely to have your company. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Ian Collins. I'm back on Weekend Breakfast tomorrow and Sunday and Monday as well. Do join me then. We've got a very busy hour to come. And breaking this afternoon, Rachel Reeves is the real petrol profiteer, according to some of the country's top business chiefs, as they attack the Chancellor for raking in millions from higher prices at the pumps. Well, more bad headlines for the Chancellor, because Britain now faces being hit harder than any other G7 country as the Middle East conflict rages. This according to a new forecast. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, in its interim report, says the UK economy is now going to grow by just 0.7% this year. That is nothing. That is non-existent growth. That is 0.5% lower than expected. And here's the kicker, folks. Inflation is roaring back to 4%, 1.5% higher than forecast at the end of last year. So can Rachel Reeves blame the war in Iran for what's happening to the British economy? Let's get the views of a very good friend of mine, former Brexit Party MEP, head of communications at Popular Conservatism, Annunziata Rees-Mogg. Hello, Annunziata.
Hi, Mark. Lovely to see you.
Well, there you go. Socialism doesn't work, chapter 377.
Oh, I think we've got beyond that chapter into the absolute epitome of why it doesn't work. That Rachel Reeves has come in, she's increased borrowing, she's increased spending, our debt costs are soaring, she's increased taxes on jobs, on all sorts of things, but all of that adds inflation. It cuts growth and adds inflation. And that's exactly what's happening. And the OECD has moved us lower than any other country. It's moved us down more because of the uncertainty in our economy, because of the inflation we've already got. Rachel Reeves, a couple of weeks ago, she was saying, we've brought down inflation. Well, it was 2% when Labour got to power, and it's 3% now. That's only a decrease in Rachel Reeves's mind, which doesn't seem to be able to do any maths.
We're currently, aren't we, Annunziata, in economic quicksand with low growth, the return of unemployment and rising inflation. You know as well as I do the Chancellor has one of three levers to pull: borrowing, higher taxes or cutting spending. Which will it be?
If she had any sense, she would cut spending and strategically cut taxes to increase growth. Instead, she'll do the usual Labour thing of increasing borrowing and taxes. We can't begin to afford that. 0.7%, once you take into account population growth, is not even wiping our nose. It is not growth. Per capita, we're completely stagnant. Per capita, last quarter, we shrank.
And of course, per capita means, you know, per person rather than the headline growth figure.
And this is because we are still having a huge amount of immigration. They have cut back on some of the legal migration, but they haven't done a single thing to smash the gangs or stop the boats coming over. Rachel Reeves relies on the OBR to tell her what she can and can't do, which levers supposedly she can and can't pull. The OBR's forecast is still saying 2.3% inflation for this year. They are way off beam. They've been wrong at every single point, and yet they try and tie the Chancellor's hands. We need the Treasury and the Chancellor to get a grip of this situation and do the measures that need to be done. And that is not giving in to pay rise after pay rise. It is not increasing spending on things we do not need. It is not increasing taxes that we can't afford. It is reducing our expenditure and increasing our income.
You can only replace the Prime Minister as leader of the Labour Party if you're more left-wing than him at the moment, Annunziata, because you have to please those left-wing backbenchers and the membership who are to the left of this administration. So it's hard to be optimistic about the next 2 or 3 years, isn't it?
The most popular choice appears to be Angela Rayner, who is really quite a long way to the left of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, as terrible as they are. They're economically illiterate. Rachel Reeves would bankrupt us, I think, in a matter of weeks or months. It would be a genuine disaster.
You mean Angela Rayner?
Angela Rayner, sorry, yes.
So absolutely. you think if Angela Rayner gets into number 10, then that's it, the country's done for economically?
I do, but I mean, the other options are no better, that it might be Ed Miliband, who is exacerbating this crisis hugely. The windfall tax on oil and gas profits, they were considering cutting and now making sure they keep in place because it's going to be a £5 billion windfall for them. But we're not exploring and using the resources that we've got. We're not opening up grounds in the North Sea, we're not using fracking, and there seems to be no advance on bringing online any new nuclear. So our energy costs can only go in one direction. If we won't increase our domestic supply, they'll only go up.
Meanwhile, breaking news this afternoon, Annunciata, an Afghan asylum seeker has been jailed for 15 years after abducting and raping a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton. Ahmad Mulakil was found guilty of rape and 2 counts of sexual assault following a trial last month, having already admitted a further rape charge. He was also convicted of child abduction and taking an indecent video of the girl. This was all the verdict of a jury at Warwick Crown Court. The aggravating factor here, because of course these crimes happen as a result of British-born people, but this man, Annunciata, shouldn't have been in the country.
He absolutely shouldn't have been. He arrived in June. He got moved to a house of multiple occupancy with obviously no security at all in Nuneaton. And by July, just over a month later, he had attacked this poor girl who'd only just turned 12, who had had a difficult upbringing anyway, was particularly vulnerable, according to the judge. And there are no words for the trauma that poor child must have gone through, because this government has done nothing to stop the boats. There was a policy in place that would have acted as a deterrent, and now there is nothing except for throwing more and more of British taxpayers' money at the French, who are not stopping the boats either. It's an absolute betrayal.
As a woman, Annunciata, does it anger you that the establishment seem to still be asleep at the wheel when it comes to this crisis?
I think that most particularly those on the left don't want to address the reality. And we've seen the breakdowns of crime depending on what country you've originated from. And there are very stark differences. But that doesn't suit the left-wing narrative that everyone is just as good and the same as each other, that all cultures are equal. Particularly as a woman, they're just not. And you know, if I was in a Muslim country, I couldn't live the life that I do. And they don't have the freedom, they don't have the respect. They are second-class citizens. And we are bringing that here, and it is dangerous to all the girls and women in our country.
Most definitely. Financial Times are running a story, looks like an exclusive. Sir Keir Starmer set to make London Mayor Sadiq Khan a member of the House of Lords. Your reaction?
Where do you begin? Sadiq Khan he couldn't deny he's been re-elected as London Mayor numerous times and is apparently going to stand yet again, but he has been a disaster for London. London has completely crumpled on his watch and is no longer the great city it once was. I no longer live there, thank goodness, but I do go to London about once a week, and I barely recognise parts of it I have known my entire life. Sadiq Khan's been a disaster. He is being rewarded for being a disaster by being put in the Lords, a job for life, and in an institution that he himself has said should be abolished. Yet more hypocrisy and jobs for the boys from Labour.
And we've been running this story all day today, Annunciata, and it's about parenting. Tech companies have been sued in the United States for the addictive nature of their online platforms, the likes of Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. But we've got a simple question on today's show. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? What say you?
No, there's no excuse for bad parenting. If you're a parent, that is your number one role in life. And to bring up the next generation to be responsible adults is the core of your being from the moment you have a child. And I find it horrific, and I don't find it associated with class. But when you go out, or even yesterday, I was driving and the car next to me, there were just kids staring at screens. You go out to a cafe and the parents are sitting there chatting and the kids are on their screens not interacting at all. It's clear to me that it's very bad for the children. The studies are there to show the damage it can do to their development socially and intelligence-wise too. Parents have to take responsibility. That is your job. Just like I don't think that schools should be having to potty train 5-year-olds, nor should they be teaching them how to brush their teeth. These fundamentals, we need to feed and nurture our children, and nurturing them involves attention, care, and discipline.
Most definitely. I think that's the key word. Annunciata, fantastic to see you again. It's been too long. We'll catch up soon. Annunciata Rees-Mogg, Director of Communications at Popular Conservatism and former Brexit Party MEP. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? We're going to make time for your many calls on that before the end of the hour. But next up, has Sir Keir Starmer destroyed the special relationship with the United States? We're going to head to America and speak to an expert on geopolitics, the former chief aide to Margaret Thatcher, no less. Don't go anywhere.
Breaking news and Talk Breakfast. 2 men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? An unnamed texter has said, "Hi Mark, no, I don't think poverty is an excuse for bad parenting myself, but it is an excuse used by many parents in that position. In many cases, the mother doesn't work, so there's no excuse whatsoever if their child isn't toilet trained, fed, taught how to clean their teeth." I also agree with lovely Matt that children from some ethnicities are just feral with rude parents. I worry for how future generations will turn out. And Chris says, "Hi Mark, no excuse for bad parenting. Too busy on their phones. I see it all the time. Always happy to blame someone else." John, "Hi Mark, we had nothing being brought up in the 60s. No heating, one meal a day if lucky. Pass-me-downs for clothes, but my parents always worked. And we as kids didn't think that we were hard up. We just got on with it, accepted the way it was. We were taught right from wrong, manners, respect for the law, respect for teachers, and we valued everything we got and were so grateful. There's no excuse for your kids to go without these days, and parents should take responsibility for their upbringing. John in Bury, thank you so much for that brilliant text. Well, where do we go from here in relation to the special relationship? Donald Trump not happy about Britain and Europe's contribution to the war in Iran. Let's take a listen to the president.
We're always going to be there, or at least we were. I don't know about anymore, to be honest with you. I have to be honest. We were always there when they needed help. We always would have been there when they needed help. I mean, think of it. We're there to protect Europe from Russia. In theory, it doesn't affect us. We have an ocean, big, fat, beautiful ocean. But we're there to protect NATO, to protect them from Russia. But they're not there to protect us. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense.
Well, let's head live to the United States and Washington, D.C. and foreign policy analyst, contributor to the Telegraph newspaper and former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. Hello, Niall.
Great to see you, Mark. How are you?
Very well indeed. Great to have you back on the programme. What's your appraisal of the special relationship as it stands?
Well, I think the special relationship is at its lowest point since the Suez Crisis of 1956, and Keir Starmer is frankly a laughing stock here in Washington, D.C. with the US president. I'm mocking Starmer almost every single day, actually, and we saw that in a cabinet meeting just yesterday at the White House. And I think Keir Starmer's weakness and his whole pathetic approach has gravely damaged Britain's standing in the United Kingdom. And certainly, I think that Keir Starmer's been the most disastrous prime minister, I think, of the modern era, and he's someone who has hugely undermined the partnership with the United States. So I would say it's a very serious state of affairs right now, and Keir Starmer, of course, is seen as a very unreliable ally for the United States, and I think that immense damage has been inflicted by the Labour government and continues to be inflicted every day.
There are commentators, including on the right, Niall, both in the United States and here in the UK, who think Donald Trump's action in Iran alongside Israel is a mistake. Can that be offered to Starmer by way of an explanation for his position or even a defence?
Well, I think Keir Starmer is a very cowardly figure, and his refusal, of course, to support the United States and Israel in the war against Iran has a great deal to do with Keir Starmer's appeasement of the Islamist lobby within the United Kingdom, and he's afraid, of course, of alienating Islamic voters. And I think this is what it's all about. And Keir Starmer is really an immensely cowardly prime minister. Now, the war against Iran, of course, in my view, is not only in the direct interest of the United States, but it's also in the direct interests of the United Kingdom as well. After all, if Iran ever became a nuclear weapons power, it would directly threaten London and almost every capital city in Europe, actually. And so the stakes are incredibly high. And what the Americans are doing here, taking on, fighting against one of the most monstrously evil regimes in the world, I think this directly benefits British national security. And Keir Starmer, of course, is doing nothing at all to support the war effort against Iran. It's very disappointing to see this, and I do think that Starmer has betrayed Britain's closest friend and ally, the United States, and Keir Starmer really is. He literally, he grovels before the Iranian regime. He grovels before China. He's the weakest prime minister, I think, that we've seen in British history. And the Americans don't trust Keir Starmer. In fact, Keir Starmer has become really, as I mentioned earlier, a subject of tremendous mocking here in Washington and a real laughing stock. That's a very bad thing, I think, for the United Kingdom at this time.
Niall, why have some Conservatives on both sides of the pond distance themselves from this war in Iran. Why does some on the right consider it to be a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, there are some voices on the right in the UK and also in the US who are against against the war, and I disagree with those those voices, and they're against what they see as another major war, of course, for the West. My view is that the war against Iran is really a war in the national interest, because if we allow the Islamist dictatorship in Iran to continue acting as the world's biggest state sponsor of terror, continue to build its nuclear weapons program, the Iranian regime will directly threaten US and British national security if we allow this to continue. Let's also not forget that the Iranian regime is an Islamist dictatorship. It's a fundamentalist Islamic tyranny. And what President Trump is doing here is he's taking on, I think, the biggest threat coming from the Islamic world today, which is why you have all of these Islamists out demonstrating on the streets of London, New York, and other cities in the West, of course. And what Trump is doing is he is directly taking on challenging Islamist ideology. And so, in my view, everyone in the West should be cheering what the US president is doing. He's standing up on behalf of Western civilization against monstrous barbarism and savagery, actually. And I think this is something that should be mightily cheered by all who believe in the defense of Western civilization and in defeating the Islamist threat. And so I strongly urge all of those in the UK on the right who are opposed to the war to view this in terms of a broader battle for the defense of Western civilization against the forces of Islamist barbarism and savagery. And this is a monumentally important fight that we're engaged in right now, and we've got to win it.
Most definitely. Is there a danger, though, that this could play out as Iraq War 2.0 with a successful military operation but no plan following it?
I don't think it's the same as the Iraq War, which involved, of course, the deployment of hundreds of thousands of US forces on the ground. The president is, of course, mobilizing a limited number of US combat troops who may be needed, of course, to free up the Strait of Hormuz. But we're not talking about some large-scale ground invasion of Iran. So it's very different to the Iraq War. I don't think the president has any intention of waging a war for multiple years. He views this in terms of a limited campaign with specific military objectives. And so far, I do think this has been a spectacularly successful military operation. I mean, there have been literally thousands of direct strikes against Iran's military nuclear infrastructure, and the US has decapitated about 2/3 of Iran's political leadership as well. And by any account, this is a spectacularly successful military operation so far. And there continue to be clear-cut military objectives involved. And I think the US military operation is going to continue until those objectives are fully met. But there's no intention, of course, for long-term nation building in Iran. That will be a matter for the Iranian people themselves to decide. But there are clear-cut military objectives on the ground. The United States, I think, is achieving much of those as we speak.
And it's creditable to the President of the United States that he's participated in this action against Iran, isn't it, Niall? Because he's not really got too much to gain politically. Many of the MAGA movement were promised no foreign wars. It's likely going to impact inflation and economic growth in the United States. The Pentagon have just asked for another $200 billion to pay for the war. So do you think, given the fact that Donald Trump is not personally gaining from this, that it's therefore quite a noble exercise, a noble war?
Well, I do think it's a noble war led by the United States, actually. And this is literally a battle between good and evil. And it's one of the most important wars, I think, of the modern era. And it's interesting, if you look at the latest polling on this, Mark, among Republican voters, among the MAGA base, about 90% of MAGA supporters backed the war.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
So
I
there's
stand
very
corrected.
strong-
Okay, so the
there's
base
very-
are happy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, the base overwhelmingly supports it. There's a small minority who are against it among the MAGA base. But if you look at the overall figures, and this is confirmed by poll after poll, there is overwhelming support among Republican and MAGA voters for the war effort, because I think they really understand the stakes involved. They're very supportive of what the president wants to, wants to achieve here. And Donald Trump is the antithesis of, weak-kneed Joe Biden or Barack Obama. I mean, President Trump is a truly, tough leader on the world stage, and he's someone who's not afraid, of course, to take on the enemies of the free world and defeat them. And I think that's the kind of leadership that we need right now. We don't see that, of course, from weak-kneed and pathetic, Keir Starmer, or from any leader in Europe right now. U.S. Military might is really dominant in the world today, and I'm grateful that we have a president in place who actually is willing to stand up for the security, not only the American people, but the entire free world.
Most definitely. We have some breaking news, Niall. Greater Manchester Police's investigation into Reform UK's allegations of family voting at last month's Gorton and Denton by-election found no evidence of any intent to influence or refrain any person from voting. Well, I would have thought, Niall, that proving family voting, proving the idea that a man should influence his wife and other relatives to vote a certain way is difficult to prove. So notwithstanding this latest development from Greater Manchester Police, are you concerned about the rise of sectarian politics in the United Kingdom?
Yes, it's a hugely important issue, Mark, and I'm very worried about what we're seeing in the UK and the rise of sectarianism in politics. And also, I'm very concerned about the growing Islamification of the United Kingdom. I know it's a big concern as well for the White House, for the Trump administration. It's an issue that comes up in all of the meetings that I have at the White House. There's a great concern that the UK is losing its cultural identity, and we are seeing the rise of Islamist political movements in the UK. We're seeing an increasing role played by Islamist extremists in British politics who frankly hate Britain. Their goal is to destroy the United Kingdom, actually, and everything it stands for. And you have a fifth column within the United Kingdom that is intent on destroying Western civilization, destroying Christianity, and I think it's an immense threat, and it's viewed as a great threat here in the United States, and it's an issue of rising concern, I know, within the Trump presidency about what is happening in the UK, because after all, Great Britain is in many respects, the cradle of modern Western civilization. And if Britain falls, if Europe falls, then I think that this would be an immense blow actually to the future of Western civilization itself. And this is a big concern for the president, for Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and for the US administration. Saving Western civilization, and the West is under attack. The UK is on the front line of this fight, Mark, and this is a battle that we have to win, because there are forces out there who would dearly seek to destroy everything that the United Kingdom and the British people stand for and have fought for many, many generations. And so everything that Winston Churchill has fought for is now under grave threat. And we have to fight to defend Western civilization. We have to fight to defend the West against those forces of barbarism that seek the destruction of the West.
And presumably that will be achieved with the end of illegal immigration, the unilateral stopping of the boats, and an end to mass legal migration as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think the first thing is to secure the borders and ensure that all illegal migrants are deported as swiftly as possible. But also mass migration into the UK has to end. I think that it's been a disaster for Britain. And also, I think the UK has to be determined to remove those individuals within the country, the whole foreign passports that actually actively work to undermine the United Kingdom. There are a huge number of Islamist militants and extremists in Britain who should be deported as well, because they're a threat to British national security.
Many of whom, ironically, would be unwelcome in the Middle East. Niall, a delight to see you again. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Niall Gardner is a foreign policy analyst, contributor to the Daily Telegraph newspaper and former aide to Margaret Thatcher, no less. More to come. We're going to return to our parenting conversation. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 3:36. You are listening to Talk. Mark Dolan with you until 4 o'clock. And I'm back on breakfast tomorrow, Sunday and Monday. Do join me for 3 shows. We're going to have a lot of fun from 6 a.m. onwards. Let's take another look now at this issue around parenting and children's access to screens. I'm delighted to welcome Arabella Skinner, Director at Health Professionals for Safer Screens. Hi, Arabella.
Hi, Mark.
Is it fair to say that screens are more of a threat to children than adults?
Absolutely. Because the whole point about childhood is we're developing. We're developing our neurodevelopment, our social skills, our ability to read, write, talk, deal with people. All of that is being developed. And that's being developed by interaction with other people. And that's the most important thing. So when you're just looking at a screen, you're getting literally rewired in a different way, and you're developing in a different route. And we can see this by the school readiness figures. You know, we now have 37% of children who are not ready for school in the latest figures, and 50% of teachers and 48% of parents believe that is because of the amount of screen time that they're spending on. Children are spending on those screens. And we know that the research is building and building and building and showing that, you know, children who spend time on screens have less developed language. They have more tantrums, they have worse attention skills, more myopia. There are some serious issues here, and that's why actually we really welcome what the government have produced today.
I think they can even have physiological problems like bad backs and sore necks and repetitive strain injury on the thumbs.
They definitely can, and we're hearing of children who are turning up at school and unable to sit down on, cross-legged on the floor because they just don't have the core strength. Walking upstairs, it's fine motor skills. So you're hearing of reception teachers having to spend a lot of time with Play-Doh, plasticine, all those kind of things because children aren't playing. They're just swiping. So therefore, they're not building those skills. And if you don't build those skills in those early years, it's incredibly hard to build them as you grow older. I mean, you can rectify these things, but you're always on the back step as we're trying to do it. If we want to give our children the best start in life, we've got to take them off screens and help them engage in the real world around them.
Most definitely. Well, you've hinted at it in your last answer, Arabella, that it's very difficult when children become teenagers. I've got a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. And, once they sort of turn 14, 15, you can't really control the teenager at that point. So therefore, it's critical that when they are 3 or 4 years of age, that these habits of looking at a screen are not embedded, because that's the window in which the parent has some control.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Mark. And we would be calling for this to be shown in antenatal classes and done in health checks. They're talking about GPs and health checks. Health professionals, we created our own guidance a couple of years ago because there was nothing out there. And we use it through the NHS, and we use it to talk to people about it, and with speech and language areas. And the problem's been that the messaging has been so confused. Parents have thought that they needed to get their children onto screens to be ready for the future world, to be digitally literate. And actually, the evidence coming out of some of the longitudinal studies is those children who spent more time on screens when they were little are judged the least digitally competent when they hit 12. So it's completely the wrong way around. And we need to give parents the confidence that they don't need to do that, and also give them the confidence that actually children don't need lots of whizzy bangs, beautiful, arts and crafts tables. You can do little simple things with them. Make them match socks. Bang a saucepan, all that kind of thing when they're little, and make it really simple. And actually, that is what this government guidance is actually really very good. It makes it simplistic. Watching with your child is better than being on their own. Speed is really important. So when the speed is too fast, it's too fast for a child's brain, and therefore we should be looking at slower programming and linking that down. Don't have it at meal times. Don't have it in the bedroom. And actually, if you were looking at a magic bullet, it's reading, bedtime reading with your children, and that has become a missing area when we spend with screens.
Most definitely. And I think maybe the mantra would be, before they're a teen, ration the screen. That's really the message.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Because the problem you've got, we love, don't we, Charles Dickens and J.K. Rowling and all the rest of it, Enid Blyton. But unfortunately, a book cannot compete with a screen, which is why a small child shouldn't get used to it.
Absolutely. And I think we don't know exactly what is motivating them, but the most recent research is really coming out and showing that when you look in children's brains and they're being read a story, all the areas around the visualization and the imagination are working in a way that when they're watching a screen and they don't have to work, they're just not working. So all those things are being developed much more when they're having to use their imagination, they're having to think, they're having to imagine what it's like, and they're looking at the person who's talking, and they're learning how to speak.
Arabella, does your heart sink when schools boast about the fact that they're bringing screens into the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the next stage of this work. This work is a really good piece of work, but the next stage has to be, well, what does this mean for early year settings? And they do talk in there that more work needs to be looked around EdTech. We are absolutely not against technology, but we need to get to a point where the teacher or the school board actually say, why am I doing this? What is the point of doing this? And does it add to what I could do when I'm teaching? We know of a early years school that brilliantly, they have little curtains over their screens so that it doesn't just it goes on particular times where they're really thinking about when they're using it. Because schools have invested huge amounts of money in this technology, and we need to get people to really think. And we're seeing some of the Scandinavian countries literally roll back their investment in tech and putting much more time into written work, reading and books, and they're seeing huge dividends in this.
Well, let me direct all of my viewers and listeners to your website, which is healthprofessionalsforsaferscreens.org. Why don't you join this campaign? Because it sounds to me like a worthy one. More power to you, Arabella, and we'll catch up soon. Maybe face-to-face, eh? Too many screens. My thanks to Arabella Skinner there, Director of Health Professionals for Safer Screens. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Is sticking your kid on a screen as a result of poverty? Well, Andrew's in Cambridgeshire. Hello, Andrew.
Hi. I'm just thinking, Mark, I've got a couple of years on you. I was born in 1968.
Very good.
And I didn't have a platinum spoon in my mouth either. My parents weren't rich. But we learned manners. We learned we had to ask before leaving the table. We had a washing up rota in our house. We did our chores. My dad had a half acre of garden with vegetables and everything else going in. We worked in that and picked everything out of it. We knew our place, and if we misbehaved, we got a good hiding. And that's what's sadly missing. And I think a lot of parents nowadays need to learn that two-letter word, no, and they need to stick to it. And my parents knew it, and they also stuck together. You couldn't play one parent against the other. They exchanged notes. So if you got no from my mum, you got no from my dad as well.
And Andrew, what I worry about is the kind of adult that we're going to get if the child has spent 10 hours a day on a screen, never hears the word no, eats Domino's pizza and sweets all day long. I'm just worried about the future of our society.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the problem now, you're seeing it manifested now. I mean, I got up this morning at 4 o'clock. And I've spent my entire working life getting up early. And, you know, you start at 7 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And some of these kids, they think getting up at 8 is early.
Yeah.
They've got no idea of the real world at all.
And I will say children have got no idea of punctuality whatsoever.
No, and they think the world owes them a favour.
Mm.
And we're just showing a very bad future for the entire country because those kids are the future of this country, and they're completely, well, they haven't got any ideas.
And you have to worry how economically productive these kids are that are sat on a screen for their entire childhood. Yeah. And you worry about their health outcomes. And, of course, they are going to go on to become parents too. I mean, this is the road to ruin, isn't it, Andrew?
It pretty much is. And the thing is, it's like they're always blaming somebody else. Well,
yeah.
Look at our illustrious leader, Mr. Starmer. Whenever he's questioning something, he blames somebody else as well. So the rock goes all the way to the top.
Do you think there's an issue around spirituality too?
Yeah, definitely. This is meant to be a Christian country, and we've managed to spend years importing an ideology that is at complete loggerheads with our Christian values.
Yeah. Can we fix it, Andrew?
I don't think it's too late, but this is the 11th hour now, so we haven't got a lot longer left.
Well, Andrew, listen, I do hope that the authorities wake up the establishment, schools, the public sector, families themselves, because you've spoken a lot of words of wisdom. And, Andrew, you had a very sensible childhood, discipline, clip round the ear. And by my judgment, you turned out very well indeed. More of this to come. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting?
breaking news until breakfast. Two men, aged 47 and 45, have in the last hour been arrested in connection with the Golders Green arson attack. To me, symbolising absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism. Again, nothing from the government.
Breaking news. It's just a small matter. They have just an announcement saying transgender girls, i.e. boys, they must leave girl guiding by this September the 6th.
We are buying from Norway because they fully exploit their share of the North Sea oil and gas fields, and we don't. Alice in Wonderland nuts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let me tell you that Ian Collins is a very lucky man because he's got a dream team. My thanks to Finley and his toilet seat cover, the brilliant Luke directing the output, the amazing Faith, who's booked so many great guests on the show today and yesterday, and Amy, my old buddy from Talk Drive back in the day. Do you remember when it was Talk Radio? Those were the days. OK, folks, look, Ian is back on Monday. I'm back on breakfast tomorrow, Sunday and Monday, 3 days. I'll promise you can't have too much of a good thing. Is poverty an excuse for bad parenting? Caroline is in Buckinghamshire. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for coming on.
I'm a self-employed person, and I've been listening to what you've been saying with all the other contributions that you've had too. But the one thing I do remember very clearly about my childhood was my mum, as my dad came home from work, my mum went out to work. Part of it was a factory in Dunstable called AC Delco making plugs.
Yeah.
And the other part was also taking us on a farm on the back of a tractor. She did potato picking while we sat in a little room waiting, and also chicken plucking, and we had to witness them being slaughtered as well, as in like a funnel, and they wrung their necks.
Yeah.
But we were so young, we didn't I didn't work it out, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But the other thing I want to say, because obviously I've been brought up in an Irish family like you, and the one thing I do remember is there was never... It was never called welfare, or it was always called... I'm trying to think of the word where you couldn't... No. It was always called... you could never have... welfare for the first child.
Oh,
family
I see. Child benefit. Oh, family allowance.
No, family allowance.
Right.
In the 70s, it was... Well, you were born in the 70s.
74.
I was born in 62.
Right.
But it was... For the first child, you never had family allowance. It was only the children afterwards, and it was called family allowance.
So that's interesting. In the old days, the authorities only viewed it as the family if there were more than one child.
Yes. Yes. And, well, I can't say that per se, but what I will tell you is the strict parenting I had, which was, as your other guests have said, brush your teeth, do this, do that, do the other, respect, blah, 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 blah. But the one thing I can say is that one of my sisters went to Oxford at Somerville College and got a very good degree. My other sister is a teacher and went to Swansea, and I am a self-employed person at the age of 64 this year, and I've been self-employed since 23.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, that's a body of work, isn't it?
That was they said, my parents always said, if you want something, you work for it.
Well, I think that speaks volumes, doesn't it, Caroline? I mean, something I'm hearing from a lot of the audience today is the idea that if children are not going to school with a meal in their stomach, if they've not brushed their teeth or have got the right uniform, a lot of people saying it's laziness. Do you agree with that?
It is laziness. My mum used to get up first thing in the morning, and she would say to us, right, come on, everyone, get up, go to the bathroom, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she used to do our breakfasts until we got old enough to do our own breakfasts. And the other thing was, we used to walk to school, and we used to have to go across a main busy road. And yet, at the ages 9 and 6 with 2 other girls with us from the same Irish heritage. We just used to have to catch the bus to the school, to our local middle school. My mum never walked us there.
Yeah.
She just literally said, right, off you go. And that's where, you know, we had to learn the dangers of everything. We had to sort of work it out for ourselves.
And what do you make of a parent that will allow their child to go to school not having had breakfast?
I would prosecute them. That's what I would do, because no child should go to school. You can go to Tesco's right now. You can get 6 buns for about, what, 90? Oh, I don't know
less
what
than
it
a
is
quid.
now.
Less than a quid.
You can buy a few bananas, and you can buy some spread. All you've got to do, or you can just do some toast. You can a cereal. Forget all that. But what you can do, there is plenty. You can give a child a banana. If the child says, "Oh, I don't want to eat now. I'm not hungry," then you give the child a banana and say, "When you have a break, have that banana."
Yeah.
I mean, bananas are as cheap as bloody chips.
Yep.
Seriously. And there is no excuse. There is absolutely non-excuse. And dare I say that Nick Ferrari had this conversation about 2 years ago with a woman, some left-wing person, who thought, oh, no, we need to provide toothbrushes. We need to provide toothpaste. And he just said, you can buy toothbrushes and toothpaste for next to nothing in Tesco.
Most definitely.
Well, I know other stores are available.
I know, but that takes us to another aspect, which is the lifting of the 2-child benefit cap, with many of my viewers and listeners, Caroline, taking the view that it is actually the parents' job to feed the children. Let's not forget, Caroline.
I would absolutely remove, to this day, I would actually personally remove child benefit. I just remove it. If you can't afford a child, don't have one. Do not have one.
And what do you make of the argument of poverty?
Why are we paying people to have children? What we should be doing, Mark, is actually making a tax break to make it easier for families to have children, not paying them.
And of course,
should make it so much easier.
Yeah.
So we should say, do you know what? You're a family of 4. We're going to give you a nice little tax break. Or this, or like, you know, when I first got married 31 years ago, there was a marriage allowance. There was this, there was that, and it helped.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't disagree that it got taken away. I don't disagree with that. But when it comes to children, you need to give families a tax break, not start giving them more goddamn money to the wrong people.
Yeah, that's a worry. There's no evidence, Caroline, that lifting the 2-child benefit cap will actually end child poverty. The two are not inextricably linked.
Yeah, well,
because
anyway,
you can't. There's no proof that if you hand money to families that the kids benefit. There's no proof of that.
They don't. Honestly, I'm telling you, I see it. You know, if you knew the jobs that I do, I work as a self-employed person, and I work. I'm not going to discuss my work at the moment, but I see people that are swinging it, and I see people that should be getting it that don't get it.
I totally agree, and they're the ones holding down 2 or 3 jobs, aren't they? Caroline, more power to you. Congratulations on your career, self-employed since the age of 23. My goodness, if that's not an example of Alarm Clock Britain, I don't know what is. Caroline, what a great call. Let's speak again soon over there in Buckinghamshire. Here's a voice note from Wayne.
Afternoon, Mark. So we need a bit of a history lesson. Many years ago, a man would go to work and the wife would stay at home and bring the kids. You could afford a house and you could have a good living. Nowadays, society has created a situation where you need 2 working incomes, and that just about affords your house, and that just about affords the bills, and just about keeps your head above water. So then parents have very little time and very little energy to effectively bring up or look after their own children. So we need to ask the question, why has society created a situation where 2 parents need to work just to keep heads above water, and then criticise them for using digital devices to entertain and effectively babysit them? I think we need to look at it slightly the reverse way round, Mark. What do you reckon?
Well, it's a very fair point, and it's a counterpoint from Wayne, which is that Wayne is essentially saying the economy is stacked against families and against parents. They have to have 2 jobs, otherwise they will not pay the rent or the mortgage, and therefore, go figure, they're not raising the kids. It's a brilliant point, Wayne.